Hello, I'm Nathan Grimm. I am a contributor for Concordia Publishing House's online worship and music blog. And I am joined today by Kevin Hildebrand, who is cantor at Concordia Theological Seminary in Fort Wayne, Indiana, as well as Matthew Machemer, who is associate cantor at Concordia Theological Seminary. Thank you both for joining us virtually here today. I understand you're both in your offices, which are right across the hall, but good job on the social distancing.
That's our plan.
There you go. You don't need to see each other except for on screen. I just wanted to have a discussion today about how life has changed both for you, and we want to talk about the church at large, as most congregations in the United States are conducting their worship services online here as we approach the end of the season of Lent and into Holy Week. So, Cantor Hildebrand, I want to start with you. Can you tell us how life at the seminary has changed with regards to the worship and just how you guys are conducting day-to-day activities there at the seminary?
Sure. Well, you may know that we've gone to all online virtual instruction when it comes to our daily courses, which has its challenges. I mean, we're certainly able to interact with the students, but a different way. And I think we all miss that daily interaction, and that spills over into our chapel plans also. We always have been live streaming our daily chapel services, and we've continued to do that early on in this quarter when we started this kind of distance approach to education. We decided we wanted to maintain our chapel presence online, and so we've continued to do that. Usually there's only 3 people in the room in the chapel: the preacher, the liturgist, and the organist. We continue to have the same liturgical variety that's part of our life together in Kramer Chapel, just with a very, very small number of people in the room. So we've had to adapt and learn how to make a few changes, but by and large, the content is the same. And we hope that our online viewership sees that continuity.
And Cantor Machemer, you're usually in charge of all the various choirs and instrumentalists that are contributing to the worship at Kramer Chapel. So I imagine there's none of that going on right now, but can you tell us how you're adapting to the current situation?
Sure. Yeah, you're right. With no students really being on campus and no outside visitors on campus, the opportunity to do things like that just is no longer there. So really, it becomes mostly about the preaching, the word itself. And then the days that I serve as organist, or Cantor Hildebrand serves as the organist, just presenting those hymns and maybe some helpful organ music as a prelude or a postlude in a beautiful way that can provide people a little bit of comfort in a difficult time, and in an easy to understand, consistent way, so that if they're singing along at home, they're not hearing any curveballs or crazy things that might trip them up. And so for me, I don't know if there's been much of an adaptation. It's more just kind of a removing of a lot of what I'm typically busy with here at the seminary. So in that sense, I guess there is an adaptation that's happening, but it's more by elimination and not by adding things on, at least in the time being.
So despite there being no congregation present at Daily Chapel, both of you are still contributing to the daily worship services by playing organ. Can you tell me why you've made the decision to still have organ accompaniment for the liturgy and the hymns, despite there being no congregation present to sing?
Well, I think we just want to continue that. What is our typical pattern? It provides, well, first of all, there's a practical thing. Whoever the liturgist and the preacher are that day, that provides just a little bit of accompaniment for them. Just 2 guys singing, that provides a little harmonic support, and it's just part of our typical pattern. Cantor Machemer mentioned how we'll have some organ prelude or postlude. We sometimes been alternating between using the large instrument, and then for the service itself, we have a small positive organ down in the baptistry area that we'll use to accompany the 2 singers. We've also used some of the CPH piano Prelude series that I'm editing, and had a little bit of that sound represented as well. I think mostly it's just for the sake of this what we typically do, and that's something that we'll continue to do.
And for folks that are watching who want to watch online services, Daily Chapel, where can they access those?
You can find those pretty easily in one of two locations. If you're a fan or a friend of the seminary's Facebook page, those are posted on Facebook every day. You can also go to the seminary's homepage, so ctsfw.edu, and right there on the homepage, there's a kind of a toolbar up top, and Daily Chapel is one of the things right there on the homepage. If you click to that, you'll see both the feed, the video, and then there should be a PDF of the order of service for every day there too, so you can kind of prepare and follow along that way.
Great. Cantor Hildebrand, you mentioned the Concordia Publishing House's Piano Prelude series. That is, there's a few editions out already and still in the works. I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about the benefits of playing prelude and postlude music at a service. How do you as a church musician see that as an extension of your service to the church?
Well, I think especially in this time, the purpose of the music before and after is, I think, just to underscore, especially if it's based on the hymn that's coming up in the service, as a way to prepare the ears to know what was happening. And it also, in a way, it serves as proclamation in its own way. When we're preparing for the service, and the musicians of whatever sorts are perhaps presenting some music based on that tune that we're about to hear, it draws to mind that text that tune is associated with. So there's a little bit of that associated with that practice. I think in these days of a very small attendance here in our online situation, when we have primarily people that are tuning in to view, I think the music, even now more than ever, serves as something to provide, a service of a comfort, something that this is something that we can do, and this is one of, I think, the hallmarks of our seminary, is to rejoice in the rich ongoing tradition of church music, and that we can continue to provide that for our listeners, and we hope that is a blessing to those who are listening.
So you mentioned where folks can find Daily Chapel on the seminary's website. Another resource that might be useful for both church musicians and folks that are used to contributing to worship and music is some of the compositions that both of you have put up on the seminary's website. At Cantor Machemer, you put up some recently for the Lenten and Easter season. Can you tell us a little bit about those resources that are available and how they could be put to use, whether it's now when online worship is being conducted or then throughout the church year?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Yeah, like you had mentioned on the website, there is a section, and I believe it's close to where you'd find the Daily Chapel thing on the homepage too. If you click on resources, you'll find a whole host of things there. Some of them are for students, some of them are for pastors out in the field, but some of them are for church musicians and those who work to plan worship in their congregations. And what these compositions are primarily are pieces based on the hymns or certain propers for each Sunday, or for many Sundays. Not every Sunday is represented, of course. But they are short and simple compositions that we've used here in Kramer Chapel, in some cases several times, that can work very well for church services and can be done with one or two voices. So even now in this time of kind of uncertainty where there may only be 3 or 4 people in the room, some of these things could still be useful, I think, for churches, and they're free to download. They're, like I said, they're things that have their genesis here in Kramer Chapel, as Cantor Hildebrand and I continue to try to resource the students that we have and get them to participate musically in chapel in meaningful ways. They've all had a life before they found their way onto the website. And if they crashed and burned, we didn't put them on the website. And if they worked well, then we thought, well, this is probably something worth sharing that can help other folks out as well.
Great. In addition to your guys' work at the seminary, you're also parish church musicians at St. Paul's Evangelical Lutheran Church there in Fort Wayne. Can you tell us a little bit about what your parish in particular is doing as they conduct online services? What changes you've had to make? I imagine some of them are probably similar to what you're doing at the seminary, but what might be useful for folks to know as they navigate conducting services on Sunday mornings and into Holy Week in an online setting?
Well, I think churches are doing a number of different things. We're kind of in new territory here that we've never had to deal with this before. But I think what we're doing at St. Paul's, for instance, we're limited to having 10 people in the building. So in addition to the liturgist and the preacher, there's usually a guy running the Facebook page and a guy running the soundboard, myself at the organ, and then we'll usually have 3 or 4 singers stationed in the balcony near some microphones, and they serve just as the congregation to both say and sing the congregation responses and sing on the hymns or the liturgical responses. You know, in a way, we really haven't changed the content of what we do on Sundays. We've been doing a pretty basic Matin service, which we would have typically done already. We really haven't had to invent many things that are really that different. But it provides, again, a continuity. And I hope that the people that are watching find, you know, a comfort and a stability in seeing and hearing something that they know this is home, even though we might be removed from it for a time being. And we've been very heartened by the number of people around the nation and world who have viewed these videos and who have made some nice comments on the church Facebook page as well.
And you mentioned that in addition then to organ accompaniment, you have a couple of singers that are there present to help with the hymns and liturgy. Why have you made that decision to have singers in the sanctuary, just a couple of them, obviously? How does that benefit folks at home who are watching and singing along?
Yeah, Matt, why don't you take that, since you've been one of those singers a few times.
That's true. Yeah, I think the benefit is just the idea that when you're at home, you know, there are some people who probably are not very comfortable singing by themselves or singing in a small group with just their family. And so it could be potentially a little awkward if you're watching the feed or the live stream, you get to a hymn and all of a sudden you hear the organ, but the pastor's not reading anything. No one is singing anything. And so it gives the impression of the congregation being there with you, even though it's only 3 or 4 voices. And we're blessed with some wonderful folks at our church who do a great job with the sound and the editing and that kind of stuff. So it sounds like a small congregation is gathered coming through the recording, as opposed to 1 or 2 people with very distinctive voices singing, you know, solos or duets. And so I think the benefit is just to give the feel of that congregational sound, to encourage folks to sing along in their homes and not to sit those parts of the service out, but to take them up as their own, just like they would if they were sitting in the pew with the full congregation on a typical Sunday.
And Cantor Machemer, you're also the adult choir director at St. Paul's Lutheran Church. Since there is no choir right now, and it's really an unfortunate time of the year for that to be the case, because going into Holy Week and Easter, a lot of parish choirs and instrumentalists are really gearing up for an exciting time of the year where they can contribute to the church's music in a meaningful way. What are your thoughts and reflections on the fact that that won't be the case this year? You know, what insights or thoughts about parish choir and musical life have you had because of the circumstances?
Well, my first thought is a hopeful one for next Lent and Holy Week. I just hope our balcony is packed with singers who just are ready to do it because we haven't had the opportunity to do it this year. But more seriously, I think a couple of things come to mind. One is truly how special it is to be able to gather together week in and week out with people who have a common love for church music, a common desire to sing, and to share that sung proclamation of the gospel with the congregation. I think in these days where we're paring down, we have to limit ourselves, you really begin to appreciate the wonderful works that our choirs do in our churches and the great benefit they are. Not only to provide wonderful music to listen to, but also to help lead the congregation in singing their own song. And that's really such a gift. And sometimes, when you are prohibited from enjoying that, it helps you to appreciate it even more. Another thing that I've noticed is how much I appreciate the camaraderie that I have with my choir. And I'm sure many other people feel that way too. Again, kind of centered around this common purpose that we have. But something that has been positive, I think, from this experience is it has led me to appreciate the richness that we have in our hymns and our liturgy. Being a liturgical church, being a Lutheran church, we have such a wonderful view of the Word of God and how that is contained in our service and in the hymns that we sing. And so even with taking things away musically, the content of the gospel is still there and it rings out so clearly. And sometimes when you're missing a lot of the things that you love, it forces you to pay very close attention to the things that are still there. And at the end of the day, we've got the gospel and we have it in our song, we have it in our liturgy, we have it in our preaching, and those things have not changed. So I long to be with my choir again. I can't wait to see them again. And until that time, I rejoice that the Lord is still giving us the things that we need as a church, even if we can't all be together every Sunday.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks be to God for that.
Amen.
We've talked a lot about what changes are having to be made and new ways of doing things from the church side, those few people that are still in the sanctuary, yourselves included as cantors and organists. What about for folks at home that are left to having to watch online services and conduct daily devotions by themselves, whether it be on their computers or hooking up to the television? What suggestions do you have for them as they experience the Word of God, like you said, and also church music in a new way?
Well, I think all of us who are learning how to adapt to this work from home, stay at home time, kids have a different kind of school schedule right now. And I think I would just encourage other parents to find ways to dedicate some time that we have some devotion time with your families. I mean, for instance, our church has put on the Facebook page, the prayer guide for the week. I'm sure other congregations are providing other resources. Just to take that time, say we're going to have devotion time, we're going to have prayer time. Maybe this is something that your family hasn't done as often as you would have liked to, and now we've got the opportunity to do it. I think one of the best things is just to be at home with the church's hymnal, whether you have a hard copy hymnal at home or you've got the Kindle edition, and just start with something that some of the prayers, or read a psalm or a hymn stanza, or singing something that you and your family know, that maybe this is a time to re-foster that kind of nice family devotion piety at your own household.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned the hymnal, which is obviously a great resource for home devotion. What if someone doesn't know where to start in the Lutheran service book? Say, it has daily prayer services and various hymns. What would you suggest for maybe a useful, simple guide for a home devotion based around the hymnal?
I can take that one. In our hymnal, we've got, in addition to all these wonderful hymns, the Psalms are all listed there. But the services themselves are listed in the hymnal. And there is, near the end of that front section of the hymnal, And I use this myself in my own devotions pretty often. Starting at page 295, there are very, very short kind of orders of service for different times of the day. Morning, page 296 is noontime, early evening, and then on page 298, close of the day. And these things are just short responsive versicles at the beginning, an opportunity to have a short Bible reading, sing a hymn, have some prayers. Those, I think, are some excellent external things that you can kind of use and then insert daily Bible readings into something like that. And there are brief kind of responses back and forth. So if you're doing them with your family, you can use those things in that way. And in terms of Bible reading or using the hymnal and the hymns, I oftentimes take my cue from Sunday morning. So you could take a couple of stanzas of a hymn that you sang on Sunday morning and sing those with your family. If you're comfortable doing that, you can pray those with your family if you're not so comfortable singing on your own. But just let Sunday morning kind of live in your house for that week. If you're not sure where else to start, I would start there with some of those readings. And then branch out from there. I read a fascinating article just yesterday from a pastor in Pennsylvania who encourages his members to prepare now for coming back to church. And I thought that was kind of interesting, but he was talking about this, using this time to foster a home devotional life, because that is going to continue to create that yearning for when you can go back to church to be with your larger family, your larger congregational family. So seeing this, yes, for the tragedy and the difficulty that it is, but also using it as a means to recenter and be prepared for when we don't have to do that exclusively anymore. We can do that in addition to our church life.
Yeah, thankfully we have that. We have all these resources that we can continue to use with our families. Thank you to both of you for joining me for this discussion today, and thanks for the work you're continuing to do for the seminary and for your church, despite the current pandemic we have going on. And thank you to everyone who tuned in to watch. We hope that you could take something away from this discussion as you navigate the end of Lenten tide and Holy Week and Easter in a new setting for you, your family, and your congregation. We certainly wish you all the best, good health and safety, and a happy and healthy Easter. Thank you.
Thank you.